There we are. Okay, so we will call the meeting to order here. And I have an addition to the agenda under 5E, letter for appeal to the Alberta Utilities Commission. Verbal report, which I will touch on. Is there any other additions or changes? If not, Councillor Gramlich.
Motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. So our first item on our agenda tonight is a delegation. And so Jewel Asterix is here tonight. Jewel, if you can, just because we're recording this and it's live, people can see it, please use the mic as much as possible as you can. But the floor is yours. We have a bit of documentation that we've already received as part of your presentation, but guide us through it.
Okay, well, thank you, first of all, so much to the Mayor and Council for inviting me to present today. I'm presenting on behalf of the Slave Lake Homeless Coalition, which we'll describe in more detail as we get through. I just wanted to point out that I have been so very busy. This presentation is an earlier presentation that was adopted. So some of the stats are from previous presentations.
That's fine.
And yeah, that's what the original title looked like. At that time, when I gave the presentation, I worked for the Friendship Center as the Housing First Coordinator. So that's the main reason why I have the policy and procedure manual and the expertise that's allowed us to move forward so very quickly as we have. So there we have it. We've always had homelessness in Slave Lake. A lot of people survive out in bush camps, but also we have people sneaking into hotels and hiding in the ATMs and post offices all over the place before the MAT program started. So this is initially we had through the Slave Lake Adult Education Committee, a literacy and learning program where we did this amazing set of documents and people basically told their life stories about what they were doing and where they were going. And this was a very interesting result of that. And this is actually what inspired the Friendship Center to go ahead and work towards a center where people could be out of the elements, and that turned into the MAT program. So it was very successful in keeping people alive during the winter, and we hope it continues that way. But it also has its limitations, just the MAT program as a concept. It's a temporary shelter. It's only during the winter, and it doesn't really move people out of that cycle that they're in. So this is kind of an interesting history. It was and pertinent to our current situation. It was actually the RCMP who wrote us our first letter of support. And you can see why. They were the ones that wanted to get something started way back in 2000. And our second letter of support was from the hospital. This time around, I mean. Yeah, so there's been action all these years, people talking, people trying, but it was actually the Friendship Center that finally did do it. The Community Friendship Temporary MAT program is the program that we're still running. We've adjusted the policy and procedures manual to reflect that we're at a hotel right now. It's kind of different, very different, I have to say. But we're making it work. And yeah, later when we get to it, I'll talk about some of the interesting holes that we've seen in our policy and procedures. But so the Slave Lake Homeless Coalition itself was formed as a multi-stakeholder group to support the Friendship Center's work and give advice on, their perspectives on how to move forward and all that sort of thing. But they were never incorporated until Gary twisted our arm earlier this year. There's been a fair amount of chaos, and that was seen as basically a solution that could work if the original multi-stakeholder group which had changed throughout the years, incorporated as a society and kept providing the programming. So the Alberta Rural Development Network is part of Rural Development Network. It's a federal program that funds these things and or partially funds them. And they recognized our emergency here in Slave Lake because there was going to be nothing for the winter. And so they have granted us funding for the next this year and 2 more years. So we're pretty excited about that. It's a really good first step. And in order to...
Jules, while you're on that though,
Yes.
and because one of the things that's important is that council hears this, but public that's coming back and watching this presentation, getting the right information, it's important that they hear it too. There are some limitations to the funding that you get for the MAP program. In the sense that some of it can't go towards rent. It's very operationally based and that sort of thing. I don't know if you had anything to add to that. I just want to make it clear to people that it's not like the RDN has funded the MAP program and there's no need for any more funds. No, that's for sure. The RDN funding does cover rent, but it only covers up to a certain amount. Like they have limited funding and they have to fund a lot of different programs across Canada. So it's less than half of our total budget, even for the MAT program itself. So we definitely plan on applying for other funding, and we have done a little bit. We did a FCSS grant for sweetgrass supports, which is coming later in our meeting.
Program.
So to be clear, the RDN money that you're receiving funds approximately 50% of the total cost of the MAT program. Roughly half of it. Yeah, that's right. And it doesn't fund any other work yet because we'll get to that. The reasons. So Slave Lake Adult Education Committee we're very grateful to them for acting as our charitable sponsor in the meantime until we get incorporated and can start our own bank account. We wouldn't be able to accept the funds or any funds for that matter. So we're working closely with them, and we just had our objects meeting today with some of our board and our legal team, which is actually being provided by Cardinal Energy. We're very grateful to them too, because there's so much to do. There's just no way I could also do the incorporation. He's going to do, we're going to get to that too. Societies Act, and then charities too. He's going to get us registered. So thanks to Bryce for the brilliant business challenge concept. It started on Canada's very first Reconciliation Day. And I just wanted to make the point that a lot of the participants in our MAP program and the people we're serving, they have intergenerational traumas. Either their parents or their grandparents, or sometimes themselves have been to residential schools. And so that is a huge factor in our work to remember that and think about that trauma-informed care that is so important for people that are struggling with these challenges. So yeah, there you have our sponsors so far. I have to say Cardinal's gone above and beyond. We are not able to issue charitable tax receipts yet, obviously, probably for about a year. And that didn't seem to matter to them. And we're just really, really impressed, I guess, with, the way the community and the business community is stepping up for this. It seems like we're riding a wave. That's the only way we were able to get started so quickly when we did on October 30th. I just wanted to point out that other municipalities have tried the move away strategy in lots of different ways, and it looks kind of bad. It really looks bad, and it has proven to be not effective. So I just wanted to share that picture so you could see, it's been done, right? And it's been studied and it's been proven not to be effective, especially for a regional hub like Slave Lake that serves so many communities around us. So originally we had lots of volunteers. We had volunteers in the morning, volunteers at night.
now with COVID, we were reluctant to bring volunteers into the program, but I'm finding that I just cannot do 7 days a week. So we're going to start bringing some volunteers in to provide breakfasts. And we also have knitters. We had a volunteer do a sock drive, 120 pairs of socks. Amazing. We have our volunteer cook crew that's going to start up when we move into St. Peter's, so we can have individually portioned meals and whatnot. So yeah, it's a different world with COVID, but we're finding that we still need volunteers. We can't do it without volunteers. So we started out with Concord Security through the college, like a professional security company. But we found that we wanted to find, and we did find some people that were, I guess, a little less institutional, a little more personal, and building relationships. And so we still have the same security team at our current MAT program, Steve and Desmond, and that's not them, that's the Concord guy. But yeah, it's working out really well, and they all know the people that we're serving, and there's new people sometimes, quite often as well, but they know them through the regulars. So for breakfast, we just have cold foods now. Oh, there's the part about the renting the Friendship Center and cooking. So we would prepare individual servings. So yeah, we opened October 30th at Northern Star Hotel because of the emergency situation. And we're very grateful to the hotel group for donating 4 of the rooms. So we're just paying for the 1 room. So we are averaging 8 people a night. We can fit about 3 per room. So we can go up to 15, and that's in our manual. That's our maximum. Hopefully we don't go over that, but that is what's written down to be our maximum. So this is more people than last year, just put it that way. I'm not sure what to expect, but so far it's more people than last year. And I wanted to talk about our COVID protocols. That's one of the places where we have a little bit of a hole in our policy and procedures manual, because it says that we're supposed to take people or somehow transport them to Edmonton, to the Edmonton isolation facility, they call it, EIF. So we don't really have transport. I'm not sure how that would work. We met earlier today with some people from the government of Alberta who are looking for a local organization to take on doing an isolation facility in Slave Lake just for 4 people, but we just don't have capacity to get involved in that. And we recommended WJS or another group that works with people, a people group for them. Yeah, but thanks to Chamber of Commerce, we have the rapid tests, and I've been very excited and pleasantly surprised to see the interest and the curiosity in our MAP program participants. So far, yeah, just about everybody is really interested in whether they're negative or positive. They like to take the test. I've had to move it up to twice a week. I thought it was once a week, but people are wanting to do it. So I am going to be reporting on that very soon. And our grant is being received as we speak. It has to go, as I mentioned, through the Slave Lake Adult Education Committee. But until then, of course, we had startup costs and whatnot, and the business challenge. Funding has enabled us to proceed. So the Sweetgrass Supports Program is what's new about the MAT program this year. This is different, and it's aiming towards personal growth and awareness and just understanding possibilities for the future, really. So I should have mentioned in part of the Sweetgrass Supports program is offering interviews for the street stories. We called them street stories, and I'm tentatively thinking about changing the title to Matt stories now because of course they're not actually, yeah. Anyway, so we're going to continue offering that, but with the ACEs, that's the adverse childhood experiences, and that's a little questionnaire. It's short, it's like a page long, and it gives you a score. And there's a lot of research around these ACEs. There's even an Alberta study, and it shows health effects and economic effects of certain things, traumatic things happening in your childhood, and how that can affect a person. So, while we really emphasize a person's free agency and that we can all make up our mind to do the things we want to do, there's certain situations where there's a background that a person needs to understand why they might be in a certain set of circumstances. And, when we know more, we can do better, right, is the point. And so that's where the ACEs comes in. And that's kind of leading towards examining ourselves and our lives and the choices and the things that have been inflicted on us. And that's when we can start setting up individual sessions. We have the donation of 2 laptops for those sessions. And also actually Lee from Indigenous Psychological Services, their CEO, really wanted to make sure there was someone available locally that, once these things start opening up, you really need someone around to talk to. So luckily they have mental health supports at the Slave Lake Native Friendship Center. And so we've coordinated with them to make sure that people can access that program as well. It's a walk-in, so they don't have to make an appointment or any of that. They can just walk on in. Yes.
Sorry to new to the group, but can you just give us an example of what Sweetgrass would actually entail? Like, I'm not really clear on what like working with them personally really means. Like,
well, it starts as it mentions in the slide. With the COVID awareness, just talking about our health and how we affect people around us. And if they're interested, we have a free rapid COVID test. And, just talking about how we can protect each other and take care of each other, look out for each other. And then we move on after. See, we're doing this on an individual basis. So I'll be talking to each person. Well, I have talked to each person about these things. This week is ACEs. Last week was COVID. But when a new person comes, we have to start at the beginning, of course, with them. So this week, some of the people that came initially were starting to move on to talking about ACEs. And then next week, we'll probably start. It depends. Like I have to kind of feel it out as I go,
But so the idea is that instead of just being a temporary resource mat type center, you're now building programming into what you're doing.
Exactly. And eventually what we want to do is access social workers and healthcare workers and people who could provide wraparound services. So that we can remove some of the barriers to housing, for people. And that's kind of what the Housing First model looks at. And I encourage you to have a look at the City of Medicine Hat and their work, because they have implemented the Housing First model, and they are the first city in Alberta to solve homelessness. They don't have it anymore. They actually have an intake process where people are just continually taken in. So they don't have anyone sleeping rough anymore. And it's just an inspiration. Like, it's really good work. So Housing First started probably 40 years ago in the States. And it's a model based on principles. So there's lots of different ways to do it. I'll talk about that more at the end because we come to some stats. So these are from the Friendship Center when they ran the MAP program. You can just see how many stays and how many different individuals over the course of the season. Last year, it was a little bit down. They had to close for 2 weeks. They did have a COVID outbreak. So, that's something we really want to avoid. But yeah, we're expecting around 1,000 stays over the winter, just looking at that. And we are keeping statistics fairly, we're keeping more statistics, I think, than what the Friendship Center did. Well, we have to with the COVID too. So these are some of the great results of Housing First. When you don't do the move along model and you actually incorporate people's needs into the work, this is what happens. The interactions with emergency medical services were reduced by 61%. Emergency room visits were reduced by 54%. Days in hospital reduced by 67%. Interaction police was reduced by almost 60%. Days in jail were reduced by 85%. And court appearances by 52%. So that was the first 5 years. And there's probably more recent stats. I look forward to not being so busy one day. I'll be able to look them up.
And these are provincial, this is provincial
The
data.
province of
Okay.
Alberta, yeah. So we started on Thursday with our public engagement. This is a really crucial step, knocking on doors, talking to people, listening to concerns, and asking for their support. We heard some concerns the last, through the years, and because of what we heard, people were really worried about the people who were utilizing the MAP program wandering around at 7 a.m, because that's when it used to let out. So we adjusted the hours. So now we let people out at 9:30 in the morning. We're missing the school opening. We're missing all of that stuff. And so, we really want to hear those concerns so we can adjust our program and make sure that we are addressing them and making them go away so they don't continue to be concerned. We went out that day, Sue and I and Jana went out on Main Street, but we're also working in the St. Peter's Church area, like on 7th Street there and 1A Avenue and all through that area, just to talk to people and hopefully get their signatures. And I have to say, this was a crucial step that the Friendship Center never had capacity to do, because it was always off the side of Barb's desk. And they have 1,000,001 other programs to do. So it's a really important step. And it's so great to be doing this with the team. Last time when I did this in 2014, I think it was just me. So it's really nice to have other people knocking on doors. It goes a lot quicker too. Okay, so the next steps for us with the town. Well, thanks first of all for your letter of support. It was great and timely, and we really do need a firm commitment for ongoing support. I don't think this work can really be done appropriately without support from the municipality and being in constant contact. And that's why I really appreciate Bryce being our co-chair and Julie's repping on the calls as well. So that contact and constant communication, that's what's going to make it succeed. Because without that, you come into some weirdness like what they just had in Wetaskiwin. I think it was the Mental Health Association running their shelter, but they had a falling out, and it was just a terrible situation. So that's something that the Slave Lake Homeless Coalition will always need. We'll always need to be in contact and have our work supported. There's probably a few different ways to do that. but I don't really want to specify right now. I just know for sure that we need to be working in concert with this kind of work. And it's not going to work if we don't, because I've seen that happen in other places. It's really, really sad. And it's the worst of all for the people who are the most vulnerable, right? Because then they got nothing after that happens. So, you know, our goal in the long term is to work towards what I said is earlier, to work towards making sure that individuals have those rungs of the ladder that they can climb out of. And it may include some kind of a group home setting or a transitional housing piece or something like that. But what we really need is to secure a facility. We need a building because this is all temporary. The hotel obviously was just an emergency. St. Peter's, it's confirmed it's the last time we'll be using that space. So we will need another facility. So that's something I'd like to ask town council to really think carefully about. I know Mayor Warman, we worked earlier this year when the Friendship Center was still involved to, I think it was put a page on your website so that looking for a location, a building, and nothing really came of it. So that is honestly one of my concerns as a program coordinator, is that I'd love to sit down with whoever is in the planning department or whoever council determines would be the best person to talk to about this and discuss different buildings and what their needs would be and that sort of thing, because we will definitely be doing lots of public engagement once we have a place identified, but we can't do that until we have a location. So that's something that I think we can work together on with the Slave Lake Homeless Coalition and the town over the course of the next 6 months or so. Because we're going to apply for Housing First funding as well. Which brings me to another completely different topic. We are a community of about 6,500 people. Anybody have a different figure, or is that right? There we go. I knew it wasn't right on. And Housing First funding only is distributed to communities with over 10,000 people. So one thing we're going to need to do long-term as well is to lobby with the understanding that, sure, the town of Slave Lake has
6781, yeah.
Okay, people, but we're also a regional hub, you know, and we serve more than 15,000 people when it comes to health, when it comes to legal services, when it comes to shopping. Lots of people come here from all over the place, and that was the hospital's estimate of the number of people they serve. So as a regional hub, I think we should qualify. And definitely the participants in our program, a lot of them, I would say 90% of them are not from Slave Lake. They're from outlying areas and places around us, our region. The people that come here to shop, they're from those places. So yeah, so it would be a good idea to think about this project as a regional project, really, and we're working on getting other partners on board as well in that regional sense. I had my first meeting with Foster Slave Lake Indian Regional Council, and we're going to have more meetings as well with our Sweetgrass supports team, which is myself and Winona Twin and also Catherine Twin. So I'm pretty excited about that upcoming work, and I think there's some synergies that we can explore, definitely. So the services that we're providing are specifically to help people experiencing homelessness in Slave Lake, but really they benefit our entire community. Because, for example, children don't have to see people at night out in the cold. You know, that is a very traumatic thing. I've had that happen where children get very upset sometimes seeing that is a thing. And there's a lot of other effects as well. When we treat people with compassion and work with them, we can have so many incredible effects. I wanted to show you this last slide. When people have a home, they spend so much less time in hospitals, police custody, and shelters. And it's actually an immense cost saving in the long term when it comes to community services.
Okay. I've got a few questions here, Jules. We can just jump into it.
Yes, please.
So you talked about the fact that you're trying to get some housing first money. And so my understanding here is that, you know, we're really focused right now on that emergency piece about emergency temporary shelter. That's what the MAP program has already provided. I want to say that I think it's fantastic that the group is taking a more holistic approach there and looking at these wraparound services. So we're able to, you know, help provide support and treatment for people rather than just focusing on that temporary piece. We're starting to see that bubble expand. We're starting to see things evolve. And I know that the eventual step is to jump into that housing first strategy there, where you transition from temporary emergency to an ongoing piece. And so one of your comments, and this is the first time I've ever heard it, so I want to make sure I understand it right, because we'll be meeting with some ministers next week, is around the fact that housing first is funds that are available are only available if you're over 10,000. And so who is actually the one that provide that? Provincial, federal?
Provincial. That's provincial.
Provincial.
That's a provincial rule that, yeah, that 10,000. Yeah, that's a provincial thing.
So this money that's coming from the province, what ministry does Housing First money come from? Does it come from the housing ministry or does it come from health ministry?
I'm looking at Gary here.
Actually, the funding model is a little bit different than that, in that the Ministry of, I believe it's through Family and, I can't remember the name of the ministry. Anyways, the funding is directed at the seven largest cities first. And then if there's any additional funding left over, it's distributed to anyone else. Essentially what happens in Alberta, the seven largest cities take up all the funding already. So even if we were to be able to have a successful application or discussion to say that we're close to 10,000 people, it's likely that the seven cities would obtain the funding over the other areas. Sorry, I'd have to check on the exact ministry.
Okay. And so, you know, coming back to that point, I guess that's one of the things that we always struggle with as municipalities is that we understand that, you know, in your example that you have up here, and basically it's this overguiding principle in the sense that, you know, think of what homelessness is costing you long term. You know, when it comes to all your enforcements and judicial and RCMP and policing and bylaw and health and mental health and addictions and all these supports, this money that we're investing into that. And so we could offset it by basically starting to work those things on the front end. And so the big difficulty that you have and the same difficulty we have in municipalities is that we don't have that front end money to be able to create what they need on the front end. And so you talked a bit about Medicine Hat, and I've made a point to reach out to Medicine Hat and their system down there and talk to the ones that administer it. And I want to say the $8 to $9 million in funding that goes that way. And I always joke that I only need $1 million and I could fix homelessness in this community. But the, you know, so I guess the point is that those things don't happen without funding. And so, you know, our issue in rural Alberta is always going to be that we need some of that funding to provide some of the solutions, and away we go. What I will say though is it's fantastic. I think the community is rallying around the fact that, you know, we're not just looking at this basic piece. We're starting to provide some structure. The organization's getting some structure. You're getting support from the business community to get into that. You know, and that the mental health piece that you talked about, the fact that, you know, you're talking about working with a Friendship Center to actually have mental health supports available on a walk-in basis. I think that's huge. Like that, because
that's something that Barb set up. Just so you know, that was completely apart from us. It just happened that she had that set up.
And that's great. So, you know, the Friendship Center has always been a lead in that. And I think by, you know, sharing the capacity, you increase the capacity of what you can do. Sharing the problem, you increase the capacity. I love too that you're keeping statistics. And so one of the things that we've talked about in our council type pieces is that we want to make data-based decisions and not just heartfelt decisions. And so unfortunately, we can't always get as much data as we want, but having more would really help us to be able to support some of the things that are going on. So having some of the data that you've already shared, knowing that you're collecting some more data, and the fact that I know that RDN is engaged in a study there, that they're bringing forward some results there as well. I encourage the Homeless Coalition to keep nurturing those pieces. Data always makes it easier for us to make decisions, for sure. I also want to say that I love that you're engaging the community. I think that was one, and you talked about just the capacity didn't exist before, getting back to it again. You're taking a problem, you're sharing that workload, you're increasing capacity, and then that's something that's needed. Any solution is going to have a community impact, and so the community needs to know what's going on. And so I encourage the Homeless Coalition to keep sharing updates on where they're going, what's happening, and what the future looks like. And you talked about that you're working on a plan that's going to come here in the future. I will say I encourage the Homeless Coalition, as much as it's great to reach out to the community. I come from two worlds. I come from the municipal world and I come from the business world when I don't have my mayor hat on. And I can tell you it would be very difficult in the climate that exists in Slave Lake for a landlord to say, here's a building for next to nothing. I just don't think that that's going to happen. And I honestly don't think that the municipality has any, empty buildings sitting around that we can. And so I'll be encouraged to hear what the Homeless Coalition comes up with ideas that are long lasting, that I recognize are going to need some support from the entire community to happen. But I just think I want to end on the fact that I encourage the Homeless Coalition, if they're just waiting for a building to show up, I think that that's the wrong approach. So I'll just leave that one there. And I think that was all I had on here. My last question. You said that you had 90% of the people that are utilizing the service now aren't from the community of Slave Lake. I'm just wondering how you determine that data.
Okay, just thinking about VoIP real quick here. It comes from the statistics that we're collecting.
Okay, perfect. Just curious for future conversations.
If I could just respond really quickly. The thing about the building, actually, that did happen. A building was offered for $1 a year. And, that's, I believe, still a consideration. If we do really good public engagement, I hope that it still could be a consideration.
Sure.
That specific building, because it did happen. $1 a year sounds great.
Point taken. Councilor Adams.
True. Just a couple comments, really. I really appreciate the fact that the Homeless Coalition seems to be getting good traction in the community. And like you say, with the engagement piece, I've noticed that change as well. And really the public appetite has never been, I think, higher than it has been lately. One thing I do want to add is I appreciate that you're engaging other communities, because it is a regional problem. It is an issue that we need to move forward together. Engaging the IRC, and I would encourage you to continue to engage the MD, us, and continue with updates. I really appreciate that, and it's nice having it brought forward. Thank you.
I just wanted to briefly show you our contact list. This is early on, and you can see this is something that's still in our, all the ones in yellow came, the ones that are not highlighted. So there's capacity issues too. These are the people that were invited to the original Homeless Coalition meetings, like the multi-stakeholder group.
Okay.
Yeah, the ones in yellow came to at least one meeting and got information, but the ones that are not highlighted.
I would encourage you to continue to engage them.
Yes,
and as it keeps coming, people will come into the fold.
Yes, and also it's different times now. There's been history, and the other thing is, we've got our team is a lot different from back in 2013. I'm just very grateful to have both Winona and Catherine on board. And Catherine brings specific talents because she's been studying with Dr. Gabor Mate. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of him, but he's a world famous addiction specialist that works in the trauma-based realm. And so she's studying directly with him, which is so fantastic. Like, we're going to just absorb it by osmosis, I think.
Okay.
Sorry,
And I did have a conversation with Catherine, and she had reached out to me. It was great to hear a member of the community that was quite passionate about how do I help. And she explained some of that program to me, but I think it's just another added service. We've increased capacity to what we can do. We're not just looking at the emergency. We're looking at, okay, how do we take a more well-rounded approach and showing that community buy-in. It's just, it's nice to see the momentum. You talk about that wave, and I hope that it continues. And I think the momentum of sharing that information, showing progress, regular updating, providing data, I think those things will go a long way to keeping that momentum going.
Sure, you bet. And here's another plus I think we have right now, because we are a brand new society taking on this work. I think that we have a good chance at grants like the Alberta Civil Society grant or the Community Initiatives Program, who provided the initial funding for a Housing First coordinator for Slave Lake back in 2013.
Okay.
I think we can make a good case, but that's just startup. That's just for startup. They won't do long-term funding. I know those grants, they like to help people start things up, but that would be like the first 2 years or something like that.
Agreed. Any other questions, comments from council? Typically, our delegations are only 10 minutes, but I will say that this is an area that has come up in some of our strategic planning. So I think taking the extra time to understand the issue and understand where you're coming from, where you're going, I think is definitely worth council's effort and time. So we look forward to those regular updates, and we've got 2 counselors that can bring that information back to us. So that's great. If there is nothing else, thank you very much for coming, Jewel. We're in the rest of our meeting, and we encourage you and the Homeless Coalition to continue to work with the town of Slave Lake and all of the other group members there, because it is a holistic approach that will need everyone to carry a corner of that box in order for it to be successful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mayor and Council, for your extra time on this. This is
well worth it.
Really appreciate it.
So with that, we'll jump into the next part of our agenda. And so, Gary, CEO update.
So good evening, Mayor and Council. First off, I just wanted to answer the Mayor's question from earlier this evening as to which ministry homelessness falls under. It's Community and Social Services. Used to fall under Seniors and Housing, but I know that they take some cross-ministry approaches when it comes to homelessness. And so that's the ministry is where it resides right now. Dive into the CEO update. I know CEO update was circulated for your review. A couple of things I wanted to point out. First off, we just received word from the Alberta Justice and Solicitor General confirming our 2022 policing grant will stay at the same level as 2021, and they're amalgamating it all together into one grant. There used to be 2. They're basically bringing it into one. And we've been notified that we are on a 1-year contract. So what that means is it'll be up for renewal again next time around for 2023. Our utilities department did run into some challenges this time around with invoices, and that our program that we use to send out the emails identified it as spam, and a lot of people did not receive their emailed versions correctly. So we worked with a software vendor to get that resolved, and all the new corrected invoices have been sent out, as well as there were some billing errors that resulted in a few people being charged very large amounts, and that has also been corrected as well. It was pretty obvious when you receive a utility bill that's in the millions of dollars that there's a mistake on that. So that's been corrected as well, and those corrected bills are going out. Our project manager is here tonight. He'll be providing a report update later on, so I won't go into detail on those projects. I'm just going to jump down to enforcement services. Our peace officers did have a very unique call this week where an injured hawk was turned into them. and they worked with Alberta Fish and Wildlife and were able to make arrangements to have that hawk transported to a wildlife rehab facility in Edmonton. Our peace officers have seen a significant increase in calls for service this year. So far, as the time of writing this report, they're up to 646 files, where this time last year they were at 546. So they're 100 over where they were at this time last year. I'm just going to jump down to on the recreation side of things. In order to keep the MRC up and running this past week or so, there's been lots of staff sharing between the facilities department and the MRC staff. Just want to recognize their flexibility for being able to do that while some individuals were off for various reasons. And then we've had some challenging operating times over there at the MRC in terms of being able to facilitate tournaments within the current COVID restrictions. And it's been a bit of a challenging time to work through. And of course, the last point is that the restriction exemption program came into place last night or yesterday at the MRC, and has been proceeding with very minimal disruption to our programming, and is scheduled to come into place at the pool on next Monday. With that, happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Questions, comments from council? Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll jump into our reports and new business. We'll start with capital projects.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council.
Good evening, Kush.
Good evening. The purpose of this report is to provide project status update to council on various 2021 capital projects. Administration worked on several projects this year. A few of the projects were deferred originally in 2020, and they were completed or set to be completed in 2021 due to COVID. This year was pretty challenging as we had higher unaccounted rate of inflation that came in place. Also, there were disruption due to supply chain that affected our material deliveries. Also, there was a lack of active representation from Alberta One Call, which pushed a lot of our projects back. A few of our projects were completed this year, but there are some projects that are delayed due to those reasons, and we are expecting to complete it next year. Gloryland Project, this project is complete. Basically, it was a road work which was built as per the town standard. A final project report will be submitted to council sometime in December. We are just trying to work out some minor material discrepancy between us and the contractor. So we are hoping to get that resolved, and project report will be submitted to council. Lift Station C Forceman project. This project, we had originally tendered this project out in early February. The first round of bidding, all the bids came over budget. The reason was rise in material pricing. Then we waited a little bit and then tried the second round. And again, it came to over budget. And this time it was significantly over budget than the first round because the prices of material kept on increasing. So we thought, let's just defer this project out and try to analyze the market and ask for any budget increase as required in this coming budget presentation to council. Next is Downtown Revitalization Project. So the project had two scopes. One was to upgrade Rene Hall Plaza.
Sorry, one thing I just want to throw out there that typically we would wait till Chris has done all of his things before interrupting to ask any question. But as we're going through project by project, if you have a question on that particular project, I would say let's interrupt and do it while we're dealing with it.
Okay. So no questions on first and second project?
Keep going.
Okay. Next, Downtown Revitalization Project. So as I said, the project was focused on two scopes. Number one scope was to upgrade Rene Hall Plaza, space around Rene Hall Plaza, and the second scope was to install a trail that would support pedestrian movement from town to Big Fish Bay. So that second portion of the project is all complete, with the exception of installing automated crosswalk system, which was delayed due to supplier material shipment issues. The Rene Hall Plaza demolition work is all complete. We did partial completion of electrical conduiting. However, we ran into early winter weathers and we were not able to complete the rest of it. So we are hoping to complete it next year. Also, administration has applied for that $500,000 grant through Canada Community Revitalization Fund, which the decision is still pending. However, we were reached out last week. They needed some clarification on our application, so which was submitted timely. So we're just waiting for final updates.
Okay.
Okay. Next, fire hall waterline upgrade. So this project was completed as anticipated, as planned. The project included upgrade 2-inch water line to 6-inch water line at the fire hall station, which will help us to support emergency preparedness of our fire hall team, as well as it will help our training facility to get into more significant training schedules. With this upgrade, we cut down the truck filling time from 45 minutes to 7 minutes.
Okay.
Next we had was fire hall high-speed internet. This project was to upgrade our existing copper internet line to fiber line. From our end, we have completed all the aspect of the project, which is to install conduit for TELUS. And only thing is TELUS has ordered the material, but they are not too sure when the material will arrive based on the shipments. So it could be expected to complete by end of this year, or it could be later in next year.
Okay.
Storage Creek North Main. So this is the water transmission main that was affected during this year. And basically we finished up all the geotechnical aspect of it, and we have to realign based on the geotechnical report. And we are currently trying to finalize the design. And once the design is finalized, we will tender it out. And we are expecting to finish up the directional drilling part of the project during winter months. And the final tie-in, which would be open cut, completed in sometime early spring.
Okay.
Drainage upgrade project. This project was to improve. It had two focuses. One was to improve, to reduce overland flooding on that 6th Street Southwest portion. So basically, 6th Ave Southwest. There we finished a part of the scope, which was to remove all the vegetated ditch material and basically reestablish new ditch line based on the revised grade. That is all complete. We are also hoping to install a little bit of concrete swale there, which will collect water and it will push the water away from the road structure, hoping like the water will stay away from it and it won't pond onto the road surface. So that is one of the scope. The concrete scope will be completed next year. Again, the challenges was one call didn't came on time. And then we hired private utility locator, but then they had a issue with some COVID. Their employee tested COVID or something. So they had to shut down for 2 weeks. That's where it was pushed back. The second aspect of the project is to install check well on our storm outlets. So we have these 3 important storm outlets behind the hospital, which usually gives us more grief during high water levels. And basically what this check well will do is when the creek level is rising, it will stop the water to get back into our system, right? So basically our operation crew can focus on other part of the town where flooding is occurring. However, this check well will take care of that portion. So we don't have to go out there and significantly babysit that storm outlets.
Because previously what happens is you physically have to go out there in the pouring rain and turn a valve to
Well,
shut it on and off.
Shut it down, right?
So this would prevent a black flow preventer just like we have in our sewer systems now.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But we will keep the old system in place, which is the gate well, which will act as a redundancy, basically.
Okay. Sorry, I want a question on that one. Why are we only doing those 3 and not all of them? Because you have 7 throughout, right?
We got 14 storages.
14, okay.
Those are the ones that are prone to back up in the town all the time.
All right, so we got 14, but 3 are causes of regular grief, so more substantial than the others that it's worth. We're gonna spend some extra money on those ones, but not on the other 11 at this point.
Usually the other 11 we don't have to shut them. Just in extreme high waters, it's the only time we have to shut them. So
Okay,
eventually it would be nice to get them all.
okay. So in extreme events, we play with the other 11, but on a regular basis, we play with 3. So let's free up some capacity by playing with the 3. Okay. Thank you.
Next is our Scada upgrade project. So this project focuses on upgrading instrumentation and communication devices, our water treatment plant, lift station, etc., which will be tied up to our Scada system where we can monitor and analyze. So we have placed an order for securing that instrumentation and materials. However, it was significantly delayed. We did receive a part of our order and we have completed those installation. However, majority of our order is still back ordered and we are not sure when that will arrive. So it can be completed by the end of this year or it could go early next year. All depends on shipments.
Okay. So it's $110,000 and you spent 7. So the part that you got was like the plug-in. Like you
Yeah,
plugged it in.
exactly. That's all.
Just so we're clear. Okay.
Yeah. Next, lift station D replacement project. So for this year, the scope included to purchase the land for the lift station. We reached out to the appraiser. Appraiser has completed draft reporting, which we have discussed internally. We provided him the comments and he's currently finalizing it. However, we are also looking on the other aspect as to how feasible is that site because it's close to the creek bank for a long-term run, right? So basically, we will have to complete a channel migration study just to determine if the site is feasible or is suitable for long-term for that lift station.
Okay.
Which is, go ahead.
Give her, Councilor Adams.
Just a quick question in regards to where this is being placed. Is this going to impact at all, or have we considered our future plans for development in that area?
Not really. It won't impact.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
Okay. Keep going.
Next is ammonia ventilation project. Basically, this is a project to improve ammonia ventilation from our MRC ice plant in case of any leaks. And basically try to safeguard our facility users and employees present inside the arena during such event. Right now, what it happens, like the exhaust outlet is right at the roof level. And then we also have fresh air intakes, which is in proximity to that exhaust. So the chances are in case of leak, the plume will go up, it will stay on the roof. And if our fresh air intakes are on, it might suck in that plume and basically circulate ammonia inside our facility, right? So we are looking at a couple of recommendations. One is to automate the fresh air intake. So as soon as it detects leak, it will shut down the intake. And the second thing we are looking at is to extend that exhaust further up higher so that gases can escape in the air more quickly. So we are working to determine the estimated actual cost, what it will take to implement this. However, we are confident that we can implement this by end of this year.
Okay.
Next one is LRE trail repair. So this was just a straightforward project to relocate a portion of trail that was on verge of washing out in the southeast quadrant behind church and Al Amin Mosque. So that portion was relocated further away from the creek bank, and we are hoping it will be good for several years. Only, yeah, just to note that only one aspect of the project is left. So we had this ADCO trail lights along this old trail path. Now the trail is located, we have to relocate the ADCO lights as well. So this year ADCO reached out to ADCO, but they said that it will take them a lot of time to get out there and at a lot of cost. So we are trying to negotiate the cost, and we are trying to hire our own contractor to do some clearing and do some trenching rather than ADCO doing it at a significant lower pricing. So we are hoping to finish up that aspect of the project early next year.
Excellent. Okay.
Next is 3rd Street Southwest, which is the street behind our mall. So the scope included to do some assessment on the underground utilities, which is water line and sewer line. We did the in-house CCTV of sewer line, and we found that majority of the sewer line is in good shape. It's an old clay tile, but it's relatively in good shape. And also comparing that to our wastewater master plan, that line is on the higher elevation side. So there is no issue with any capacity. So we can leave a portion of the line as it is, and we can proceed with spot repairs if required. Because there were a few sections where the tree roots were coming inside the line through those pipe joints, as well as there were a few sections where the services from the houses were not like cut off at the pipe fall, rather they were extended, like protruding inside the pipe, which might affect the capacity at some point. But however, we can work on those things and try to minimize some scope and costing of the project. And we won't have to replace the whole sewer line per se. However, we are also looking into options to repair in place versus what the cost will be to replace it completely. And then basically whatever the best option would be, we will go with that. We'll come back to council on their approval.
Okay, we'll discuss that at budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then water line is pretty deficient. It's only a 6-inch ductile iron line. It has given us so much grief in the last few years. We had multiple breaks in same year. So which basically says that this is not in good condition. And also the water model says that this needs to be updated to a 12-inch line. So basically we have to double the line. So we would have to go ahead and do that anyways. However, we can save some cost on the sewer line.
Okay.
So we are hoping to begin engineering work early next year. And based on how the overall season looks like, we might do construction next year, or we may push it to the year after. Next is sidewalk rehabilitation. Again, this project was allotted this year to rehabilitate and repair town sidewalk system to minimize safety hazards to pedestrian. The area of the sidewalk to rehabilitate were identified, but the project funds were held to support downtown revitalization in case that grant application doesn't go through. However, the grant application review was delayed and we were not able to complete the sidewalk rehabilitation. However, we are hoping to finish it next year as the funds allocated is from MSI and can be rolled over to next year. So shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. I just want to touch on that. That was one of the things I really struggled with when I got on council. Every time we didn't spend money on a project, I'm like, hey, we saved that money. Well, no, it's just we didn't go into the wallet. So because of a lot of our capital stuff comes from grant funding and reserves, it's just unspent money. And so our balances didn't change. Any other questions, comments from council? Lots of this stuff will become clear when we get into budget here coming up next month. But if there is none, Councillor Adams, feel free.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that council accepts this report as information.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's carried. Thanks, Kush.
Thank you.
Okay. Next one, service level update, sidewalks and trails, snow removal. Sean. Mr. McConnell.
just want to keep my eye on you guys tonight.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to speak this evening. The purpose of this report is to provide council a summary of the service levels for sidewalk and snow clearing. So some background information: the snow removal on trails and sidewalk falls into two categories: sidewalks adjacent to public property, and then sidewalks adjacent to town-owned property, and trail clearing. So by bylaw, residents are required to clear snow and ice from their sidewalks adjacent to their property within 24 hours from the last snowfall. As well, they're not allowed to place snow onto the sidewalk or private property or the street. This is enforced through enforcement services. So the town is responsible for removing snow from the sidewalks adjacent to town-owned properties, as well as the Allery Trail system. So our crews place priority on clearing the snow from the sidewalks as per the bylaw. For the trail network, trail clearing is initiated no more than about 48 hours after the snowfall stops. So depending on the amount of snow and drifting, it can take up to 72 hours from the end of the snowfall to completely clear the trail system. The town has approximately 10 kilometers of trail and about 3 kilometers of sidewalk that we maintain. It takes approximately 16 to 18 hours to complete the snow removal for both the sidewalks and trails. So during icy conditions or the freeze thaw sections, crews will also put down pea gravel and sandy salt on those areas as well.
Okay.
So any discussion with that, or
So the idea of these bringing these service levels here in a timely manner is that we're coming into that season now. And so this is, the purpose of these types of reports are to accomplish two things. One, that we all understand and are clear on the service level that we are providing. It's also an opportunity to say, you know what, I don't like it and I'd like to change something and whatever else. And it doesn't mean to change tonight, but then it becomes more of a elevated priority discussed at some of budget time. And then we have enough time to prepare some information to determine what kind of budget impacts that potential change could make. So any questions on or comments on sidewalk and trail snow removal? Councillor Adams.
Just a quick question, actually, for my own understanding. Okay. What counts? For example, I get in front of the town areas. That's pretty clear as to what that includes. But like say in front of SL Ford on that long sidewalk there, is that something the town maintains, or is that the responsibility of Ford, for example? Or I'm just grabbing one out of the air.
That would be adjacent to the property owner there.
Okay.
So that would be there. So ours is around this area. We do pick up some areas along where other areas, along 6th Avenue by the trailer park. That is actually the trailer parks, but they don't do it. So we kind of do it on our way over to the trails there. But that is right off of the service level of Slave Lake Ford. So it's theirs. So we do go down it because sometimes we'll take it when we're on our way to somewhere else, but it is the service level for them. Most of the downtown core as well.
Are we 100% sure on that one? Because I thought we did all of Main Street as we went down.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. It's part of that 3 kilometers.
Okay.
But some of it does fall like we do. There's pieces along there that when I check with planning and development that it is actually part of theirs, but we just do it because it's part of the sidewalk that we do.
Because you're going and you only have a small section.
And we're already doing it. We're not going to go off, leave it and go back. We do it. So.
Okay. That makes more sense. So which brings us to the point of a question then would be, should we be amending that map route or whatever else if we're doing it anyway, that we say it's part of the service that we deliver rather than, because the issue always comes at the end of the day that somebody says, well, you always do it, so why aren't you doing it? And then we turn around and say, well, we were kind of doing it this time, but we don't really have to. We just do it because we're going through. Yeah. I would just make a recommendation that if it's built on our planning and development maps that we put in there, that we maybe amend it to make more sense operationally so it's clear to both sides what we're actually doing. My 2 cents for the day. Other questions, comments, open discussion? Feel free to ask whatever you want. If there's nothing, I imagine there'll be more on the next one. Councillor Ferguson.
Make a motion that council receive this report for information.
Any further discussion? Other question, those in favor? That is carried.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sean. Mr. Couturier, we're going to talk about street snow removal.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of the report is to provide council with a summary of the service level for snow removal. A little bit of background, the town is responsible for the snow removal on the streets. The snow removal from the streets is performed following the current bylaw and our service levels. So the snow removal, I won't go through the first part. Sean already covered that off in sidewalks. The second part is during the snow removal process, we don't actually take the snow off the streets. We just plow it to the side and put it in windrows. To elaborate a little bit on that, once we put snow onto sidewalk, then the resident isn't responsible for shoveling the windrow off the sidewalk. So there's a lot of misconception about that. So, but yeah, the downtown core is the only place that we actually take it out and haul it out other than cul-de-sacs. And I'll get into that a little bit in the maps, stuff like that. So we have a few maps and I'll jump right to them and we'll go through them. That's where the good stuff is. So the first map is our priority map.
So this would be page 34 in our package.
Sorry. It's our priority map. In the red is priority 1. That's our emergency route. So that's the route that the hospital, from the hospital to the airport and to Main Street, basically. And that's designed for the ambulances, essentially. The green, the second priority, is our arterials. So Corey.
Go through the map and then we'll get some questions on the map.
Okay. Arterials are your main avenues that have a lot of traffic, and they're to get from the collectors to mains and stuff like that. Then our priority 2 is our collectors, and they're to get from your residential streets into your arterials and then into your mains. So those are our 4 priorities. The next on page.
Before we jump off of that,
okay,
a point I wanted to make here is just so that we're clear and we don't miss it while we're on this. The idea that when we're doing snow removal here, we start out in priority 1, then we move to priority 2 once priority 1 is done. And once priority 2 is done, we move to priority 3, and that seems straightforward until it snows a whole bunch again. And so sometimes before we can actually get to priority 4, we have to go start priority 1 over. And that's how the system is designed currently.
That's correct.
Councillor Adams, though, has a question.
I was just wondering about you said it was a quick access to Main Street on the priority 1 loop. And why is it kind of in a circle around 5th and 8th? You know how it comes out of the one side of the hospital and they're doing the loop? That's
your main routes that the ambulance takes. So your ambulance will go from the hospital, it'll come around 8th and that way, or it'll come the other way. And it gets to the airport, to the medevac.
Yeah, I guess his question is why not just one route instead of 2 routes for them?
We don't know which way they go. Sometimes they go this way, sometimes they go that way.
It looks like it's exactly in half either way. That's it's not like one's quicker.
Yeah.
Okay. Next map.
Okay, the next map is the odd and even years. So basically in snow removal, we have a few rules. And it comes to the sidewalks. It's for the pedestrian traffic. So if there's a sidewalk on each side of the road, then it's odd and even years. If there's no sidewalks, it's same odd and even years. So now if there's no sidewalk on one side and a sidewalk on the other side, it's always going to go to the side that doesn't have the sidewalk.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilor Adams.
Just going to be annoying, I guess.
That's all right.
Sorry. I'm wondering, and this is more of a personal thing, I guess, but why when there's no parking zone that you don't always pile the snow on the no parking side? Why do you alternate?
Give us an example.
Springwood.
Right from my house.
Yeah. Because it makes it harder again, this is personal experience, makes it harder for kids to walk to school if they're having to go around and across and across.
It was designed, so we used to take it to the one side all the time, and we had a lot of complaining from the residents especially in Springwood, saying that why should we get the snow all the time? So years ago, they made a decision to split it and go the odd and even years because there is sidewalks on both sides.
Argument to that is I end up having cars in the middle of the road.
Pardon me?
You end up having cars sit in the middle of the road to allow passengers to get out on the one side. The doors can't open over a sidewalk, so they're parked further out in the middle, passenger door open so people can get in and out. So you're not, you don't have as wide of a road as you would if you piled it all on the one side. Because if you got parking on the one side with no windrow, then that passenger door and passenger can get out onto the sidewalk like a normal parking.
So on one year, you plow to one side of the street that allows parking. You plow to the opposite side. So the side that has no parking on it, you plow to that side, it's fine because it's just like normal. But on the alternating year where we plow to the side that doesn't allow parking, then we're basically moving the windrow out and we're moving the car out into the middle of the street.
But no one's parking on that side, so no one's having to get out of the passenger side door. So that car's not parked an extra 4 feet over.
Okay.
Right? That's where I'm getting at, because I know you come around that corner and you'll have cars that are parked way the hell out there.
Yeah, and we could definitely look into some change on that, definitely.
Okay.
Anyways, sorry.
Councilor Graham.
Question to Councillor Adams. So you would prefer the snow on the no parking side? Yeah, okay. I was clarifying that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely look into it. Yeah.
And any other zones that, so obviously, like personally, that makes sense to me, right? Like, why would we pile snow on the side that you have no parking on one side? That would be the side to pile snow on, and the side that you do have parking, you wouldn't pile snow on. So you highlighted one area of town, see if there's some other ones there, and if there's.
Yeah, we're always tweaking our snow map. Over the years, it's got a lot better than what we used to have. We used to have it went to one side every year. So every year we tweak it a little bit more.
Sounds good.
So,
okay, other comments? Okay, where are you taking us now?
okay, then the downtown core. That's just the map of the downtown core that is hauled out, and we pile it. And the next map has the places we strategically put them, the piles, and that's to accommodate power lines and stuff like that. They are usually hauled out within within that night. So we plow it all to the center, then we put it in piles, and then we have trucks come in and haul it out the same night. So that's your downtown core.
So to be clear there, we have to contract equipment to help us when we do that. And so the idea is you guys you don't do it after every snowfall. You wait for the piles to basically get a substantial point. You do it through the night for the least amount of disruption to traffic. And at the same time, you would look at, so you do part of the downtown hall, and then usually right after you guys do the cul-de-sacs as well, right? Or are part of it?
Yeah, we try to. So what we do is we do all the residential. In the cul-de-sacs, there is no place to put snow. So we pile it in the center of the cul-de-sacs. And then we try to coordinate it so that we're not getting the contractor to come out and do downtown core and then getting them out again to do the cul-de-sacs. We try and coordinate it so we can use the resources when they're there.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Adams.
All right, one more, just so I understand it more. Is there, what's the whole reason for doing the clearing all the way down 4th Avenue, all the way down all the way over to 3rd Street? But like, why is it extended past what the downtown core, what I envision it to be? If you know what I mean there, on the edge?
So I can answer that, because I'll tell you.
I'm just curious.
Your vision is that Main Street is one line.
Yeah.
And back in the day, somebody else's vision was downtown was 2 lines. That's realistically what it is. And so there are other businesses that say exist on 2nd Ave that would argue and say, I'm still part of the downtown core. And so probably made that argument previously to previous council before my time and said the downtown core is not just one street. It is these multiple spots.
I guess for the density of parking, right? Is why
Density of
we're
parking
doing this
becomes the
removal of
biggest issue.
snow?
Pardon me?
It's because of density and parking that we remove the snow from this section?
Yes.
So then on 3rd Ave and 4th Ave, is that still a requirement? Just curious.
3rd Ave and 4th Ave, yeah, we take that out. It is part of the core, and that was the designated core. So the previous council has designated that the downtown core. So.
So the question is do you want to redesignate the downtown core to something else?
Basically, just wondering if we've ever assessed the idea, just if it's always been that way. And I don't have my mic on, but.
That's right. Yeah, no, you can look into,
Well, I don't know. Asking a question, I would say, because if we're going to task administration to go look at those options, we need to say that's because we don't like the option that's presented. So personally, I would say that myself, that there's a number, you alluded to the fact it's about parking down there. And so we do have some public parking access. So the town, just so we know, we haven't even talked about this in previous, but the town owns 2 parking lots in downtown. One in the Royal Bank site and one over by the Koinonia Christian School site that we have to maintain. So recognizing that both of those are outside of that main lane, if you took that Second Ave as an example, to get to our public parking that we've designated as part of the downtown core, do you do half the street or do you do the full street? Right? So, I would say that, recognizing those 2 pieces, you might say, okay, well, let's not do 3rd Street. Let's just do the 2 lines and not square it off. You do Second Ave as an example and 4th Ave, but don't do 3rd Street and come back around. That might be an option to look at. Because I would say that on that periphery, we have less traffic out there.
You're saying 3rd Street or 3rd Ave?
3rd Street.
We don't do 3rd Street now, do we, for removal?
not in the core, no.
Right.
Sorry, yeah, we're just doing, okay, yeah, right. We're only doing, well, you're doing 3rd Ave right now, right? So we're doing 2nd Ave, 3rd Ave, 4th Ave. So we're basically doing 3 lines out anyway, and we're not doing the periphery already. So we're doing the ones that are adjacent to our parking or as part of the concentrated downtown parking. So I don't know, like realistically, I wouldn't change it, but Councillor Drew.
Just to further that question then, how much of a difference would it make in removing one, like, let's say Councillor Adams here, we removed one of these streets. Is there a huge incremental cost difference to doing that? Is there?
So if you're thinking about doing 3rd as well, 3rd Street, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, he's just indicating maybe potentially removing some of these.
To be clear, we're talking about removing some, not adding some.
Yes, removing some, yes. And is there a massive cost savings to this? Like, because if we're looking at the reason for changing it or not, I would like to know if it's an incremental difference or.
There will be some cost to it, yes, definitely. It takes more time. So to do a street like 3rd would probably take a couple hours. So you're looking at a couple hours of our time with our equipment and then a couple more piles. So you're looking at any one of those piles at any given time.
Sorry, Calvin, you're going backwards. You're going the other way. You're talking about adding. So if we removed one of these streets, so hypothetically.
Oh, if we removed, okay. Sorry.
Hypothetically, we don't do 3rd Ave Northwest as a spot check piece of line. We're not going to do 3rd Ave anymore as part of the downtown core. What would that realistically save us?
Probably a couple $1,000.
Yeah, that's what I was just wondering, if it was going to be a couple $1,000 for probably a pretty marked decline in perceived service level. I was just wondering if it would be worth it or not.
Part of the problem would be too on some of these, right? Like if you look at it from a business standpoint, because we take out parking for a second, just look at it as a business piece, is that there are businesses on 3rd Ave, as an example, that where do we block off the sidewalk in front of their business? Right? And then you can't get pedestrian traffic to those commercial places, or do you plow them in? Right? So example, on 3rd Ave would be a prime example. On one side of the street, there's a number of residential ones, right?
Yep.
Plowing to that residential side is no different than we do in our other areas. But on these, where we have these direct commercial impacts there, we'd be plowing right onto their sidewalk, inhibiting the ability of pedestrian traffic to get to them. So like example though, okay, go ahead, Councillor Adams.
I'm just, not that I'm arguing to have this done. I was just curious, and the couple $1,000, I kind of get the value. But to do the 3rd Ave, like you're saying, with the plowing and blocking a business, that's one business that would impact. And choose not to put that as where you're gonna pile your snow.
Oh,
You
no.
look on the north side of Third Ave is wide open. The south side, you've got a business that just opened, which I get that would impact. Then you go into the church and
Well, the south side, and so I'm not.
area, but if for a few $1,000, honestly, I'm good.
Yeah, okay. So a couple things I want to make clear. So committee of the whole is like open discussion and debate, so it becomes a little bit more informal. And so it's good to debate these things. So I'm just trying to look at it from different options. So don't feel like, at no point, don't feel like I'm saying that this is why we should do it or shouldn't do it. It's good to ask these questions and figure things out. Because that might be a street where you actually could. It's commercial all the way along the south side, but on the north side, it's all residential except for
The church.
the church. Well, you still technically have Service Credit Union there on the end.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
you've got 3/4 of it or something as an example, but if we're not looking to change it, it's whatever, but it's good things to pick apart and say, is there a better way to do it? Any other questions, comments on it? Okay. Where do you want to take us next, Calvin?
All righty. Then we'll be putting this pamphlet in on our webpage. Just a little extra information for the public to go through and stuff like that.
What about, Calvin, just what about your updates and that sort of stuff that you do? So part of the other thing that's built into a lot of our reports is around communication. So as much as we all, sorry, Councillor Ferguson.
I'm just wondering, as part of communications, if it's, have a 1-page FAQ, send out with utility bills about snow removal, just so residents know.
We could definitely look at that too. We were tossing around a few ideas. Actually, we've got 2 different pamphlets made right now, and we're in the process of basically combining the information for both pamphlets and coming up with something a little bit better. And yeah, a guy could send these pamphlets out in the mail too. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
So just along Councillor Ferguson's point, and so what I was meaning to say there previously was that part of this discussion is always about, okay, now we understand the service level. How does our consumer, how does our client, how does our residents understand that service level? And so we've asked administration previously to have a communication built as part of this reports that come back to us. So in this regard, you guys have got this pamphlet that you highlighted that's 5-6 pages long. I always say, like, read shortened up, and I'm the worst one to say shortened up because I don't know how to shorten up anything I say. But if there's a way that we can shorten that up so it's quicker, clearer, concise, I like the FAQ thing. I think that's usually gets people to the point faster. But I will say that administration, please don't ever lose the fact that just because we now understand what you guys are, what the service level is, the other 6,900 people don't yet. And so it's usually typically almost more important than the conversation we have in this room. Councillor Brandel.
So while we're on communication, so we haven't had a significant snowfall yet. So I'm just wondering, because when we see these things that go on social media or in the utility bill, we see it once and then it's gone for the year. Can we do like a graduated thing that we do it every once a month, quarterly, whatever? Like, I don't know what the exact time is, but I would like to see it repetitive because it sticks in people's brains a little bit better.
See, what I would like to do with this pamphlet, or whatever pamphlet we come up with, put it on a little bit before the season and then leave it on through the whole season. And you'll see a few more of these pamphlets coming out in the future. Dust control, there's another big hot topic. So I'd like to do a pamphlet on dust control, and we'll kick it out before we do dust control, before we do gravel and stuff like that, and then leave it on there throughout the summer sort of deal, eh?
And so leaving it on a static piece there where you have like our website, that totally makes sense. But we also, using their social media or whatever, we're pushing information out too. So thinking of that perspective, I think is that can we do regular pushes? I see administration nodding over there, and if I could read Jordan's balloon above his head, it would say challenge accepted. And so I think we'll leave it with him and see what he comes up with. Councillor Giroux.
Do we do any type of mail out with this? Like, I have digital utility bills, so I'm not sure. Does the pamphlet come out for those. Jill's nodding yes. Okay, but my question's answered.
Okay.
We haven't in the past, I know years ago, we used to send stuff out in the utility bill, but they're going electronic and everything like that too. So,
I get electronic ones for my stuff and it gets pushed out.
Yeah.
I see it. So I also appreciate too, like our stuff where we say, okay, this is kind of where we're working next. This is what we're doing and that sort of thing. You guys did that in previous years. And I know Chris would push that out from communications to say kind of, this is where it is. The caveat to the public is stuff happens and it's not going to work out perfectly. And sometimes we got to reappropriate resources, but I like those push out notifications to say this kind of area gives people an idea to stay out of one area, or when they're, the other thing I found beneficial when they said, well, I live in the southeast and I didn't see them today. Well, yeah, like if you look, they're in the southwest today and that's why they were there. So I would just say, maybe if you want to tweak that communication, fine. But the point of knowing that they're not in one area and they're working in this area, I think goes a long way to residents. So please don't lose track of that piece.
yeah, I think it's helped in the past couple of years that we've been doing that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Other questions, comments? If not, I would say that this is my favorite part. Councillor Brandel.
I will accept the report as information.
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Thanks, Calvin.
Thank you.
Okay, FCSS grant application, Jill. Actually, I apologize, you guys. We still have some more stuff to go over in our agenda. We've actually been in meetings since like 4:30 today. Let's take a 5-minute before we jump into this last report and go over our last few things. Okay. Okay, we are back. Thank you for that quick little break. Jill, your report.
All right. Mine.
You're on.
Okay, I'm on. Okay,
You're
sorry.
on.
I'm not used to sitting here. Thank you for allowing me to present. So I'm presenting on the grant application we received from, it says Adult Education, but that's because they're the banker for the Slave Lake Homeless Coalition Society. Normally we do 2 grant intakes a year for FCSS, but we haven't had any applications. So we're just looking at things on a case-by-case basis right now. For those of you that don't know, FCSS has very, for the provincial portion of the funding, there's very specific funding criteria that has to be met. FCSS is really based on preventative programming. So when we're looking at this from an FCSS lens, things that can't be funded would be intervention and counseling that's working on trauma related things. So it can provide assistance for counseling, but as a like a one-time counseling session to get a referral to someone to do bereavement counseling or one example. So I did talk to the FCSS coordinator provincially today. So one example she used is for people that are new immigrants, that they could provide a one-time session for them so that they don't fall through the cracks to then go on to different levels of counseling from someone else. So through an FCSS lens, this doesn't, because it's the Sweetgrass program. So sorry too, I guess Jewel did present on it earlier, but there is also the application in here. So it is unfortunate it doesn't fit under the FCSS lens. However, it is a really good program. We don't want to discount any of those things. So it can't be funded, unfortunately, through provincial FCSS funds, but it is something that we could look at funding through the town's over contribution to FCSS. So FCSS is 80% provincial and 20% town funded. So we could look at funding it through our town funds, but not from the provincial FCSS funds. So.
And what's your recommendation?
I recommend that we fund it because it's a good program. And I think as Jewel presented earlier, it's a great addition to the MAT program. It's something that's helping, long-term versus just providing a spot for people to sleep overnight. So.
Okay. Questions, comments from council? Councillor Adams.
Just new to this, trying to understand the process a little more. But with an application to FCSS and what our restrictions are, is there any assistance we gave to the Homeless Coalition to say what parts we do, how you can do it? Because from what I understand, the way she was talking, some of that would fall underneath a preventative measure, not necessarily an emergent one. Is there a portion of that that can be used with FCSS funds?
There is, however, the way the grant is written as well, what Jewel has requested for funding is an operational fund. So that couldn't be funded through this either, the way the grant's written. We have tried to work with them on this. However, FCSS is very complicated. So some examples that were given to me today of things that could be funded would be like a volunteer coordinator. So I know that actually was something I was going to bring forward after we presented here, is that I know just from our last meeting, the Homeless Coalition meeting, volunteer coordination's becoming a huge thing. So that could be something that could be funded under FCSS. So, having some additional staffing support for that. Sorry, I'm just looking. Oh, if they wanted to be some more studies done through FCSS and how certain things are for the Homeless Coalition, how certain things are affecting homelessness and the promotion of the Homeless Coalition and things like that can be funded through FCSS. However, anything that's going to be longer than a one-term session for counseling. So the way this program is set up is it's an ongoing thing. It can't be funded, unfortunately.
Keep going, Councillor Adams.
Just with that note, then, can this be put back and said that these are some of the aspects of what, just in her conversation, having that conversation with her, bringing those aspects out would enable us to actually fund this a lot more effectively than.
Yeah, and we did have those conversations, and I did suggest some adjustments to the grant application, but this, we can't write it for them. So this is what's come back to you.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson.
I'll also make a statement. So as a homeless coalition member, I've seen firsthand the amazing progress that the group has made in a few short months, and without town supports, the program will likely not be able to run. So I'm in full support of this.
Okay. I would just encourage there, to Councillor Adams' point there, it sounds like, Jill, you're working with the Homeless Coalition or whatever else, but I also recognize too that, this is a ladder that has to be climbed, and that ladder isn't totally defined yet. So as the Homeless Coalition is talking about those next steps, as they're talking about expanding the bubbles, they're talking about expanding services, to be clear on some of the things that FCSS funds, so they can build that into the programming that we do have funds for, I would encourage them to do so. So please make sure that our members of council take those things back and bring those comments up at the future Homeless Coalition meetings.
And I will say too that Jewel really wanted to get this in, because part of FCSS too is that this funding has to be spent by the end of this calendar year. So it wasn't something that we had a lot of time to work on. So if we had more time to work on it, then it likely would be something that we could flesh out a little bit better too.
Councillor Adams.
That was one of the things actually I was going to ask is, can this be pushed back to get reapplication of the grant by next week or whatever kind of thing, and be brought before council again, or is that not a practical way to do this? That
to be funded under FCSS, like the provincial funding, we could fund it. She's asked for $7,000. So if we could look at funding this through another contribution, or from over contributions, that would be my suggestion. And then we can go back and work with them on some other things. And then also, because we do 2 grant intakes each year. One thing too with FCSS is that it can't be it's supposed to be to get groups off the ground, and then for them to be sustainable. So one of the things that we do look through normally when we have a batch of them is that we go back and see what funding they've received and for what programs from the past. So that would be something too that we have to look at with them, but definitely something that we would work with them moving forward. So.
You keep going.
Well, that would be my concern here. I was wondering how many times they can come back to the well. So if we're only letting them come the one time, we want this to be an effective.
But in fairness, there is nothing built that says they can't come back to the well.
No, there isn't.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood.
No, there's not. And I think FCSS is not totally in my scope. But my understanding is, and from talking to the we have to report back to the province. It would be fine, we could decide on things, but for the FCSS, the provincial portion of FCSS, there's outcomes that have to be reported back to the province. So if we don't report those properly, or we have things that don't fall under that, our funding can be pulled, or we have to repay it. But sorry, I'm like, where was I going with this?
I would just say that there's an opportunity though, I guess.
And also so we have a pot of money from them. So usually what we do when we have a batch of them is that we can't always fund everything that everyone's looked at or requested. So we go back and there's a matrix of rating. So if someone's asked for continual funding each year, and then we have a whole bunch of people that are looking for money, but we've, continually funded this one program, we might have to look at adjusting that to get some new programs that benefit the community off the ground. So it's not to say that we can't fund it each year, but we have to make sure that we're being fair to everyone that's put in an application.
Okay. But there is an opportunity if the Homeless Coalition had another project to bring it forward that fell underneath, as they gain better understanding of what programs would qualify under FCSS to bring it forward.
And for example, the Friendship Center had applied for it for multiple grant intakes for their volunteer coordinator, and then we're given some money towards that. So. Okay.
Other questions, comments? So a volunteer coordinator is one they have reduced capacity for, and in fairness, no matter what council decides here, the 7,000 is probably not going to. Approximately how much more money would we still have in FCSS that has to be spent this year or turned back? Any idea?
I would have to bring a report back later on. I don't have that off the top of my head. We do have 35,000 budgeted for community grants, and no grants have been given out this year because we have not received any applications.
Okay, so one piece I would take back largely to the Homeless Coalition that knowing that we have to report this stuff and award it by the end of December, if you feel there's an opportunity to bring a comprehensive grant that's very clear and precise on what you guys are doing, I would encourage you to do so.
And we do have a FCSS coordinator starting next week who, like all of us, as you guys know, are filling in multiple roles. So when we have an FCSS coordinator, like that's their job. That would be something that they would be able to spend some time with them working on.
So just a point of clarity though, any grants that are given this year have to be expended this year too,
They
right?
do have to be
So
spent by
that's
the end
part of the
year, yeah.
difficulty as well.
Okay. Okay, so knowing that, questions, comments. So I'll say too that one, I definitely think there's an appetite from council and there's an appetite from our community. It came out loud and clear during election and campaigning that the community has an appetite to support this. And so I always cry when we send money back to the government. So if there's a way that we can leverage some of those funds for something we're all passionate about, I encourage us to do so. I also recognize, I want to say this right off the bat, Jill, I appreciate that you have stepped up. You're in one role, you're covering another role in FCSS, and now we're actually having you cover as an interim director of community services. And I understand that your plate is overflowing and we appreciate everything that you're doing. And we continue to do so that. But I also appreciate that administration, and basically a recommendation is, hey, this doesn't fit in the mandate, but we recognize it's important and it's a good program, and we're looking at alternative ways to do it. We can play with our model and we can make this work. That's messaging that the town of Slave Lake should always be proud of sending out. And I'm totally in favor of this.
And I was going to say too, like from my end, to thank you to the provincial FCSS, because that's part of it too, is that, we get a grant application in, I contact them, they get back to me to see, because it's like, I want to make sure I've covered my bases. And so it was only today I got some of those other options too. So we will work through this, but there's always that little catch up too. So yeah.
Okay, Councillor Adams.
I don't think we put the motion forward yet.
Nope.
Okay, and I'd like to put the motion that council direct administration to fund the Sweet Water Supports Program in the amount of $7,000 with fees coming from the non-FCSS account.
From non-FCSS.
Non-FCS, sorry.
Okay.
And just a point of clarity, it's Sweetgrass Supports. Maybe
Sweetgrass, not Sweetwater.
Yeah, Sweetgrass.
Oh, I put it in there too. That's my fault. So, and I have it in there wrong too. Sorry.
Okay, please note that Jill has accepted full liability for this error.
No, I
Council has
totally,
nothing.
I thought, I was like, yeah.
Motion is on the floor. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, Jill. Have an amazing night. Let's get into committee updates. For those that are new to council, reminder that theoretically this is designed to, Tyler, follow your own agenda. Let's get back on track. Tyler has a habit of doing that. So I added a thing to agenda, which is letter for appeal to AUC verbal report. And I apologize, my agenda piece has notes all over it. I missed my own note. But here's the piece. So one of the things council has been working on getting oriented, and one of the big things coming up next week is AUMA. And so we're doing some lobbying to a number of provincial ministers, and we've been talking to a number of different people and different organizations, see how they're affected and make sure that we're on the right path. One of those things is very obvious from our discussions and strategic planning that we did last week. Was that last week? Yeah. Last week, sorry. They start to blend together a little bit. But supporting economy, tourism, growth are still something that's very strong from this council. And so we made a point to reach out to forestry. So we had a meeting with the Alberta Forest Products Association from a more Alberta perspective to say, hey, what's some of your challenges? What's on the radar? What's the messaging that needs to go out? And then we also engaged representatives from all of our mills here in Slave Lake. Sometimes people think oil and gas about Slave Lake, but we lose track of the sense that we have some of the most concentrated, highest density forest production in Alberta. And so we're more forestry town than most of the rest of Alberta out there. And the message that came through loud and clear from both of them was a couple of things. One, some caribou mitigation pieces that are going on, and we'll take that message back to the minister. But the other piece is this one from ASO. It's basically ASO is an independent group that has been tasked to look at how energy is consumed and how it is basically charged out as to consumers. So keeping this simple, basically AESO decides how we charge customers for electricity. And so they've made a recommendation to the Alberta Utilities Commission, who is reviewing their application to make some changes. And they want to redistribute how electricity charges are handled out. And so the potential impacts, it looks like residential customers, like being fully transparent here, would save with the new projected costs, would save somewhere between 30 cents up to a maximum of $1 per month on their energy consumption bills, which sounds great. But they're basically transferring a lot of that to industry. And so industry would see somewhere between anywhere as low as 10% up as high as 50% increase on their charges, on their utility charges. And so for some of our industries that employ, our 4 mills employ approximately 1,500 people. For them to absorb an additional 50% in cost is going to have an ability to be sustainable. It's going to have an impact on the bottom line, and people are going to lose jobs. And I think if you went to the average consumer in Slave Lake and said, do you want to save 30 cents or maintain employment? I think it's going to come loud and clear that employment is definitely the preference at this point. And I'm not here to fight for industry. I'm here to fight for Slave Lake. And Slave Lake needs to make sure that our economy is strong, that the average Albertan, the average person in Slave Lake is looking for stability in their income. They're looking for stability in their household. And at some point, we got to stop punching industry in the stomach in order to do that. And so basically, this application has gone through, and AESO, who's the one that's made the application to the Alberta Utilities Commission, acknowledges that although they've made this, they do acknowledge that they have not taken into consideration in their modeling the socioeconomic impacts on communities from doing this. And so I think just as a leader, I think we have a responsibility to say, hey, whoa. We need to change the framework. I'm totally interested in that discussion. I'm totally interested in looking at better alternatives, because I do think that there's some flaws in the system. Any Albertan who's seen their utility bills over the last 12 months is probably thinking there's a flaw in the system. But making changes with looking out the broader impact, I think is just crazy at a time when we definitely don't need that. More than anything, Albertans, Canadians, people in the world at the moment need stability in their life. And this just throws a wrench into that. And so I would like to make a motion and put forward a request that we have the opportunity, basically, as a municipality, to send a letter, basically an appeal to the Alberta Utilities Commission to say, hey, time out, pause, we're concerned about this. The angle would be from the fact that please, before you make your final decision on what the new modeling looks like, that you take into consideration the socioeconomic impacts on communities, on industry, and what it's going to have for jobs and communities to be sustainable and businesses to be sustainable. And so my motion that I put forward on the floor is that we direct administration to draft a letter that highlights our concerns with the recent AESO application to change bulk and regional rate designs, and urge the Alberta Utilities Commission to consider the social and economic impacts of any changes to that rate and design. Specific to rural Alberta. I'll add that piece, perfect. So that's kind of what I wanted to put on the floor. Any discussion, comments on that, thoughts on that? Are we on the right track? Not on the right track? Anybody going once, going twice? I always take silence as we're on the right path. Motion is on the floor. As there no further discussion, call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. And so Joanna, Alberta Forest Products Association has offered to help us with drafting some correspondence for that. So we'll do that behind the scenes too. my intention is to reach out to other municipalities and kind of get them spearheaded, because this one is one I think that has huge potential threats, and because it's right after election, that it might not be on everybody's radar. So I encourage our members of council that when you're talking to other members of council when we're at AMA next week, that bring up this conversation, because there's literally no municipality in Alberta that is not going to be affected by this change. Okay. Getting back into committee minutes, sorry. So these are designed to be quick verbal updates. I would ask questions after each. And I'm sure you guys have seen them at a previous council meeting. So we'll start with intermunicipal committee. These will actually go quite fast because most of our committees haven't met yet, but intermunicipal committee hasn't met. We have a meeting set for December. Where our first meeting, we're actually going to entertain all of councils, all the council members. So typically intermunicipal is the mayor and three, even three. But I did talk to Murray and say that I think it would be benefit for everyone to get to know each other, for number one. Number two, our intermunicipal and fire services agreements, they have huge financial impacts on both of our municipalities, as well as, that's built around the service delivery for all of our residents. And so I think everybody understanding that on getting on the same page is beneficial. So our intention for that first one is to have everyone available, and will be a bit of an in-depth discussion, likely half a day for sure. Watershed Council.
We have not met yet. It is scheduled, but nothing in place yet.
Okay, Chamber of Commerce.
We met today, just a quick update that the Chamber of Commerce has done the bylaw amendment to allow for the town council representative, being myself, and future for there to be one seat on the board from town council. So that would be added to our committee listing moving forward. The next event on deck is Moonlight Madness along with the Santa Claus Parade, and that is November 19th. And that's also in partnership with the All Seasons Market. We've recently completed strategic planning, and we're moving forward, filling some gaps. We've had our longtime executive director, Kimberly Hughes, resign for her council seat here. And so we have in the process hired an admin assistant, and we recently have approved to put out a request for application for an event and project coordinator moving forward.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Brandel.
So is the chamber going to have an office at this point, or is it still like a part-time thing out of her home, or?
So the plan was through a partnership with Community Futures that they hired an administrative assistant full-time, but there isn't full-time work with the Community Futures office. So we're going to enter into a contractual arrangement so that they are able to contract out their hire to the chamber, and then we're both able to use that together.
Okay, so if I wanted to contact the Chamber of Commerce, do I go to Community Futures office or not?
No, the admin assistant is the admin for both and has the chamber's phone, 849-3222, and the email address as well. So all means of contact stay the same.
Okay. I had a question there. So the chamber has asked for this representative from the town and amended their bylaws. We have our representative that sits there. So this is more in-depth thing, just to be clear for the public, that we always had a representative that went on behalf of the town to the regular meeting, but they've asked for a board member to sit on the executive to help with that piece. Did they do the same for the MD?
I was just going to add that as you finish saying that the request will be put out to the MD today. So it was initiated by the request for the town, and then seeing that it was approved for the town, because it did have to go back to the board, that request is going to be to have an MD representative. The idea is to bring a little more long-term stability to the board, because as we all know, it's hard to get board members to fill out some of the seats on there, and then that'll build a better connection in the region.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Alberta North Central Alliance. We haven't had a meeting. We're working on it, but I will provide an update that behind the scenes, we've been working on a Seti Grant. So, we use acronyms all the time, and I don't have this written down. So, it's basically a federal economic development initiative that's created. That might even be what it's called, Canadian Economic Development Initiative. But the idea is that they're federally funded, and they look specifically for collaboration between municipalities and First Nations. So I spearheaded a campaign behind the scenes there to get an application in They're basically, they had a multi-year plan with different phases there where they kind of rolled out. And the idea is you see what kind of groups are interested, you shortlist, then you shortlist, and this is the group that we're going to work with over the next 12 months. And this is what we're going to do to kind of grow and support them. They've done through phase 2 and they're into phase 3 now. And I'm basically looking for groups to work with. So we put forward an application and have been shortlisted. And so we have interviews set up with them at the end of the month, and hopefully we're able to get some resource funding and, more than anything, some administrative support there to help build a strong foundation for that group as we move forward. And we'll have to reach out and get some meetings set up here with the group here for next steps. Housing.
So we had our first meeting today. It was largely about some orientation, introducing new members, and understanding the Housing Authority's mandate. So.
Okay, Tri-Council Health.
Geez, I'm up first this whole time. Same thing as housing. It was mostly an update. I was nominated the chair for committee, and the vice chair is Sandra Melsner. There were some updates on just the health services, that we are at the full complement of 9 doctors. There are 7 nurse practitioner positions that are available, but 2 are vacant right now. So they are actively recruiting for those. And right now the patient wait times are a little bit up, but most of that was due to some short-term illnesses and vacations. And there is walk-in availability each day.
Okay. The other exciting news is that there's another nurse practitioner starting at the end of the month, so we'll add some more capacity.
Yeah, there's a nurse practitioner starting on November 29th. And then Johan also mentioned that this week we should be learning about the compensation model change with regards to physicians. And then he'll be providing an update on that, on how it affects. Right now, they don't think it will have a huge impact the way the changes have been implemented on our physicians and their compensation model. But he said anything could change, and that will be provided with an update at our December meeting.
Okay, so just so the council's aware too, that one is one that we've kind of lobbied to the minister in the past. And so the province is taking a different approach to how they deal with compensation with physicians. Which 95% of the province operated one way and Slave Lake operates a different one. And so it was one that we had highlighted to the minister previously that, listen, your approach with everyone is like literally we have an opposite system here. And so take that with a grain of salt. And so there was some acknowledgement from the previous minister about we need to do that one delicately as a council. Our goal was never to interfere in those contractual discussions there between an employer and their employee, or a service provider and a contractor about what that should and shouldn't look like. We just wanted some acknowledgement that it's a different system here. Support our physicians in that. And so some of the big frustration has come from the physicians about basically what's happening is they said, okay, we're going to change your paycheck. But we're not exactly sure what we're going to tell you what it's going to look like. And we're actually going to have you start paying us for some stuff. We're going to pay you for more stuff. And actually, can you bring the plan to us? And basically our pushback was like, listen, these guys are not employers. They're not business people. They came here as an employees to a model that was built on employees. So you can't take the same approach, and you're going to have to help guide them through this. So, the other thing is that they keep pushing those deadlines back. So the problem is when you say, hey, what does my future look like? And they say, well, we're not 100% sure, but we're going to get back to you, and we'll get back to you by this date. And this date's coming and coming and coming, and nobody gets back to you. And then all of a sudden they just say, oh, actually, we're going to extend it. That creates a lot of stress on the system. And with respect, our healthcare professionals have had their share of stress on the system. So I'm excited there. I did talk to one of the physicians on the weekend. That they were looking forward to this meeting that's happening today. We'll see what happens. So I just wanted to highlight that background, because if it's something that we start talking about again, there will be some urgency, because basically the new model is supposed to be in place by the end of December, which is knocking on our door here in a government world. This is one of the first meetings that they're finally getting into it. You can imagine how frustrating some of that is for our physicians. So we do have like a chief of staff, and I'm probably not using the right title, that looks after and represents all of those physicians, is Dr. Frank. And I would encourage you, Frankie, we'll talk after the meeting there about connecting with him directly to follow up and make sure that they have that support, because the last thing that we need is more stress in the system. Sorry, tourism.
We meet tomorrow. Oh, and I just do want to announce that the AGM is November 24th.
Okay. If there's any way the town can help promote that for you to get people out there, we encourage you to connect with us and share that information. Library.
Yes, we had our first meeting on November 3rd. They have put on 8 different programs for the month of October, and they had a total of 378 participations in those. They also held 2 video programs that had a lot of views. Their COVID update is the Slave Lake Library is still open from 10 to 4 Monday through Friday. They are still operating at a third capacity with masking in place. They are going to be going back to being open evenings starting in January. Their budget is going on here the end of November. They are currently launching their Christmas card for seniors right away, so the community is aware. And they were very excited that they were able to get an extra storage shed for some of their extras, like their book bike and some other fun programs that they have. So that's it.
Questions, comments? Naming advisory.
Have not met.
Community futures.
Have not met, scheduled for the 25th.
Canadian Community Education Committee.
Have not met yet either, scheduled for the end of the month.
Homeless Coalition.
So we've had 2 meetings. We met October 22nd and November 9th. The program is currently running, so the MAP program is currently running out of the Hotel Northern Star and has been running since October 30th. Much thanks to the Hotel Northern Star, as they are donating some hotel rooms for a period of 1 month. This is a donation valued at around $12,000, and it is very much appreciated. We have received conditional approval from the Ecumenical Church as a one-time and last-time option to use the original church as a location for the emergency overnight MAP program. This is, however, subject to community engagement, some fencing going up, and MPC approval. The last few weeks were largely spent figuring out logistics to get the program up and running, and we are now moving over to the community engagement portion, and that includes knocking on residents' doors. We did receive a grant in the amount of $25,000 from the Rural Development Network. Altogether, we've received $72,000 in grant funding. While this is a great start, it will still leave us really quite stretched to operate a program for 5 to 6 months. And at our last meeting, we had 22 people attend. It is encouraging to see more and more people sitting in on meetings and various stakeholder groups sitting in as well. Anyone is welcome to attend a meeting. The next meeting will be November 19th at 1:30 p.m. via Zoom. So if you're interested in attending, please reach out to the town and they can get a Zoom link and agenda sent over.
That's fantastic. One thing I had a comment on, Councillor Ferguson, is that it's obvious that the group is building some momentum and you're getting good attendance at your meetings.
Yes.
You know, the pockets though, you know, I've said this more than once, that, you know, any real significant improvement is going to come from, you know, multi organizations getting involved. Example, if we don't have mental health included as part of that strategy, we're not going to be successful. We don't have addictions as part of that strategy, we're not going to be successful. So any of those groups that are not sitting at the table currently, make sure you reach out directly to say, listen, this is where the world is at and we need your help. And people love to come when there's momentum. So don't lose that opportunity.
Well noted. Thank you.
Children Resource Center.
Have not met yet.
MPC.
We have approved 3 development permits, one at Big Fish Bay for a borrow pit, one for True Balance Chiropractic to go into the Rebrina Dana building, and then the AHS outpatient at the old fire hall.
Okay. Any questions, comments? SCAB hasn't met. Waste.
Have not met.
There's orientation coming up in December or something.
That's true. Yes.
12th, okay. Airport.
And have not met either.
Legacy has not met yet either. But we are working through the good news at the moment there as we're working through some negotiations there with a tenant for some space up above, which will be a welcome addition. And there are still bookings that are been happening at the facility, but we need to book another meeting here. And I think Jill reached out. We're just trying to figure out some dates. Protective Services is at the end of the month.
Haven't met.
Emergency Management Advisory Group meets 4 times yearly. That's kind of their disaster services group. We talked about that at one of our orientation pieces and will be happening in the spring. Northern Alberta Mayors and Reeves Caucus and Northern Alberta Elected Leaders are 2 organizations the mayor goes to. Both of those have not met yet. So Northern Alberta Mayors and Reeves Caucus is one that kind of encompasses all of Alberta, Northern Alberta. It's usually spearheaded by the city of Edmonton and kind of chaired by the mayor of the Edmonton. And Northern Alberta Elected Leaders, I think, is a more rural approach and focuses more on west Alberta. And I'll give you information there as we set some meetings for those because they haven't even been set yet. At this point, I'd accept a motion to accept the committee verbal updates as information.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Management task list is attached in our package. And so one of the things I will say is that we have, we need to talk about process. And if we were smart, we would have done this ahead of time, but we didn't. And so one of the things in the past, we've talked about just having this. Do we have any questions? Management going through and saying, okay, here's the update on each one. I'd like to, kind of combine those and go for a combination of the two. I don't like it where we just ask questions. I'd love, because it's kind of generic or whatever. And so Gary, I don't expect it for this time because I'm just bringing it up now. But for future ones, I'd appreciate it if the CAO kind of let us through a few of those things, say, hey, kind of this is where things are at, what that bubble looks like. But you want to play here?
I do have 2 updates that I can talk about.
Fantastic,
tonight.
perfect.
Yeah. Excuse me, the drainage master plan. Earlier this week, there was a kickoff meeting led by Alberta Environment around the flood hazard assessment. That project was supposed to have been wrapped up entirely in 2020. For various reasons, it's been pushed back. Alberta Environment is moving on with the next level of that work that they had previously committed to. So that's important to inform our drainage master plan. So it is resuming again. And the other one that I was just going to make mention, I think the work has actually been completed, and that was relation to motion 33021 that's providing a list of priorities to our MLA and having that meeting with the MLA. Those are the ones that I can provide updates to right now, and a lot of the other work is still ongoing.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on the management task list? Going once, going twice, going 3 times, 4 times if you want. Councillor Brandel knows how to play the game.
I move that we accept them as information.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, agenda next. Correspondence. We've got a list of the MD committee appointments that are attached. There's a lot of them, so appreciate that. And then the last is a letter from the Solicitor General's office talking about the policing grants that Gary touched on the beginning. So motion to accept those as information. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Mayor's Corner. I got to tell you, the public doesn't get it, but on this side of this table, I have to say a couple of things. First off, year 11 or 12 of my life in politics, we've never had this much orientation, this much training, and things going on. I think before the start of this week, we were in over 50 hours of meetings together. One thing that's apparent is that this group is excited and they're willing to put in the work. they don't complain and they want to know more. And so that's, it's really exciting to work with a group like that. After today, they're probably saying, you know what, I'm good though for a couple of days. And that's great because for a couple of days, we're going to get a break. But next week, we're going to jump into AUMA. And so we've got 5 days in Edmonton. There's a couple of days of training that new legislation requires elected officials to do a certain amount of training before I can't even remember, it's 30 or 60 days in our term. And so we've got 90, John is telling me from the gallery. So we've got a couple of days of that, and then we've got 3 days worth of AUMA. On top of that, embedded into that, we have multiple minister meetings. Some days we're dividing and conquer into 2 or 3 different groups here to be able to do them. With having COVID last year, AUMA was kind of a virtual thing. There wasn't any opportunity to meet with ministers. And so we have a number of items that have been sitting for a while that need some attention. What's also apparent is that this group is quite strategic. And so it's not just about voicing concerns, but it's also about talking about opportunities and to let the province know and some of the great things that we're doing here as well. And to that notion, we had a meeting with the MLA last week. Sat with him for over an hour going through a number of those priorities and encouraged him to join our minister meetings in Edmonton next week, which he is trying to do. We've had FOIP training. A number of our committees are meeting. We've had meetings with industry. We've had meetings with organizations and agencies. I just want to say to all of council, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. What was also great was we had strategic planning last week. So two days where basically all of council's together and we sit with a number of administration. Tracy led us through that, a new contractor that we had never used before. I thought she did a fantastic job. Different perspective there. Lots of bubbles coming through, areas of priority. And what was great is that there's a lot of alignment. There wasn't a lot of things where, I think there's this genuine passion to do a lot of great community things and a lot of things that the community has been talking about. And no one's saying, you know what, I don't think it's worth us spending time on that. It's a big boat with a lot of things in it. And so we're going to have to figure out how we resource that property. That's what budget's for. That strategic planning is kind of the initial part of it is done. And so we're working on finalizing that report, and then we'll be excited to share that with the public about what we're doing and where we're going. Some of that we've already built into our strategy and our meetings with ministers next week, and other pieces will come as part of some of our committee of the whole meetings as we talk about some strategy on those items as we move forward. What's apparent too is that we're not going to get it all done in one day. So it's going to take some time. I appreciate our administration, which multiple people are doing multiple jobs, taking the time to be part of that. And the message that we tried to deliver from council was that we believe that this is a team sport and are excited to work together. And I hope that that's a message that came across. What was also interesting is there was a piece about our personality profiles, basically, and we spent a couple hours kind of going through that and understanding. It was interesting to understand how everybody thinks differently, how everybody's brains are wired differently, who's going to ask the most questions at council meetings. Like, it was great to see those pieces because you can start to anticipate them and know where they're coming from. So I actually thought that was quite enjoyable. Last one, I will say, council's inbox has been busy too. Residents are reaching out. And so there's no greater frustration, I believe, from our residents in the town of Slave Lake currently than the REP program that we have mandated at our recreational facilities. And so I understand that there are a multitude of perspectives. And one of the things I find the most difficult being an elected official is knowing that everybody's right answer is somewhat different than others, and some of them are extremely far apart. I want to give council some credit that we've been having these meetings, and council's been bugging administration daily. Well, what about this? What about that? Pull this report. I don't understand this. And I want to give administration credit that you guys have done a fantastic job about, even though that we've put on a lot of pressure to really question what we're doing and where we're heading, that you guys have been happy to share that information and been very responsive when we don't give you a lot of time to say, we want to meet and we want to figure this out. Council's done a great job about providing a variety of perspectives. And we recognize the frustration that comes from our residents. But I will say in closing, that anyone in our community that feels that we have a multitude of options to choose from, you have the incorrect information. We have two options. We either do REP program or we don't do REP program. Under the not doing REP program, which seems simple and easier, there are a number of restrictions that inhibit our ability to do programming, inhibit our ability to have certain program, inhibit our ability to have some people attend our programming. And that's just a start of some of those restrictions. What is clear in the REP program is that it gives us more flexibility to have more residents attend our facilities and increase our levels of programming that we can have. However, I do recognize that it presents a very philosophical dilemma, discussion, question around, are we segregating people? Are we turning one group of people against another? And I think that's a fair question. That being said, I'm not tasked to answer that question. I'm tasked to do the best I can for leadership of the community as are these, and follow the provincial restrictions and mandates that are sent down by the provincial government. And so I encourage you to share your thoughts and strategies with your municipal elected officials. But if you are frustrated about the provincial registrations, I encourage you to talk to the province. And so I'm not trying to pass the buck here. I am just telling you that we're trying to operate within the box that they've given us. What is also very frustrating is that box constantly changes. The number of updates that we get after they make an announcement, that we're just getting another one again last Friday, is frustrating to say the least. There is no consultation with municipalities. There's no consultation with our administration when these decisions come out. It's basically, here's your box, here's your options to choose from. We basically go back and say, okay, well, we got like 17 questions because of this, because, how do you interpret this? Because interpretation is everything as we go through these pieces. And so they clarify a little bit one day, and they clarify a little bit another day, and they clarify a bit another day. And so I want to give administration credit that a lot of this comes from stuff that they announced in September. Here we are in November, still getting clarity to those things that were announced in September. We tried to take a hybrid approach which give us the most flexibility for our residents, even though the majority of Alberta went to the REP program right away. That being said, we've been advised that we can't keep doing our own interpretation of it, that the interpretation becomes clearer and clearer every day. It would be easier for our administration. It would be easier for this council. It would be easier for our residents if that interpretation was a lot clearer, a lot faster. However, the one thing that we have learned through COVID is that seems physically impossible. So we will continue to do the best that we can. I encourage residents to keep reaching out. I appreciate administration responding and trying to be as flexible as they can. I appreciate council bringing a variety of viewpoints and fighting hard for all of those things. And I encourage our residents to keep reaching out to the people that will make an active difference in their lives as we move ahead. And we will deliver that message to the province when we meet with them again next week as well. So with that might have been the longest mayor update I think I've ever given in history. I'll try to keep it shorter for previous ones, or for future ones, sorry. And with that, I think we can call it a night. At this point, Councillor Adams. Motion to adjourn on the floor. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried.